Hey, Cypher here. This is a tough subject, folks. The controversy surrounding Edward Snowden and the information he revealed still looms large over the USA.
If I'm president, Putin says, hey, boom, you're gone. I guarantee you that.
He can't seem to stay out of the news.
Learned that the Russian government is considering offering fugitive Edward Snowden as a gift to President Trump.
Hell, I'll bet some parts of this review will be out of date by the time I release it. I've had to dig in deep, even speaking with some classified sources in my research. I've read hundreds, if not thousands of pages on this subject before ever even writing the script. Of course, the director seems like he doesn't give a crap about that tedious kind of stuff. He'll just make it up as he goes along, because it's probably my most hated director of all time, Oliver Stone. It's about time I tackle one of Stone's works.
I stay away from the politics. I really try to stick to my role as a dramatist. This is what I do. As you know,
because he is perhaps the most vile creator I've covered on this show since D.W. Griffith. Plus, this is just a great subject that needs more light shone upon it. Most of you guys remember this whole thing going down, but everyone seems to have an opinion without having an understanding. They either think Edward Snowden is a patriot or has committed treason. And they probably think that with the flimsiest of information to back up that opinion.
They can leak documents about the U.S. Army's operations in Iraq.
Edward Snowden revealed a bunch of secrets, I guess, or information into WikiLeaks.
Edward Snowden leaked. He's in charge of WikiLeaks.
So here's a brief explanation of what Snowden did, and I'll attempt to maintain some sort of moral ambiguity. In 2013, Snowden burst onto the global scene. A series of information dumps were disclosed by several newspapers.
PRISM is a secret government program that allows the National Security Agency to tap into the databanks of internet companies in search of foreign terrorists.
This information showed that the US government had engaged in a number of surveillance operations that went well beyond the realm of legality. The American intelligence community had been doing blanket data retrieval on everyone around the world without getting proper court approval, including on American citizens, a blatant violation of the Constitution.
And ultimately, the truth sinks in that no matter what justification you're selling yourself, this is not about terrorism. Terrorism is the excuse. This is about economic and social control.
It turned out that the leaks were the result of a singular national security agency contractor named Edward Snowden.
My name's Ed Snowden. I'm 29 years old. I work for Booz Allen Hamilton as an infrastructure analyst for NSA in Hawaii.
He was a former analyst for the CIA and had worked with Dell as a contractor for the CIA after that. In order to leak the information, he had fled the United States to Hong Kong. After revealing his identity and hiding away for a few weeks, Julian Assange of WikiLeaks fame secured him a flight out of China towards Latin America. He was waylaid in Moscow, and because his infamy had become too great, he couldn't get a flight out, and was forced to get asylum from the Russians, where he remains today. Before we get into the movie, I want to speak to the controversy surrounding Snowden's leaks and his flight from US authority. Now, there are too many aspects to go over here, so I can only address what I think is pertinent in this day and age. Firstly, to those who wish to vilify the man, you ought to take into account the decades of intelligence whistleblowers who have done similar things. Ever since Watergate, whistleblowers have been a vital source of information. Many have been severely prosecuted and defamed, most of which have eventually been vindicated. One must first consider such cases as the Pentagon Papers, a massive information dump to newspapers which proved that the US had been fighting a covert war in Laos and Cambodia despite officially being allied with them, along with several other scandals. Daniel Ellsberg was the source of the leaks and was charged with espionage, which would have led to a lifetime in prison, if not execution. An entire misinformation campaign was mounted against Ellsberg by the White House plumbers, directly commanded by President Nixon.
I just say that we've got to keep our eye on the main ball. The main ball's Ellsberg. We got to get this son of a bitch. And
After all the presidential meddling was revealed, the charges were dropped in 1973. On the other hand, Snowden is no Ellsberg, for he refuses to face the same charges. Both have revealed information critical to ongoing US operations, but one did not flee his country. It is an American tradition to challenge power, but as Henry David Thoreau so eloquently put it when he was protesting the Mexican-American War back in 1846, under a government which imprisons any unjustly, the true place for a just man is also a prison. True civil disobedience requires facing jail time, as has been the tradition since Thoreau penned that statement. Hell, the movie obliquely references Thoreau as an inspiration of Snowden's.
Any other influences?
I'd say Joseph Campbell, Star Wars, Thoreau.
Snowden himself has claimed that he won't come back because he would be tried unjustly.
It is not possible to receive a fair trial. I've long said that I would return were it otherwise. But the Espionage Act does not permit a public interest or whistleblower defense. Those charged under it are silenced by law.
But that is precisely why he should never have fled. By hiding away in Russia, Snowden only damns his own story for posterity, which historians are ultimately in charge of. Snowden most certainly has been a victim of a government disinformation campaign. Only the day before this movie was released, Congress put out an unclassified document decrying nearly every facet of Snowden's biography. It is incredibly well cited, with footnotes nearly everywhere, almost as if it were written by one of the numerous historians Congress has available. But some of it is verifiably false, bringing into question the entire document itself. Of course, that is the case for almost everyone speaking about him. Argument is constantly swirling around what he did or did not do.
No, I'm not going to be scrambling jets to get a 29-year-old hacker.
Many people are even contradicting themselves about Snowden's biography, including Snowden himself. Despite Snowden not being in the US, he has been quite active in proclaiming his own story, while many of his former superiors, and even President Obama, were vocally opposed. As such, much of Snowden's biography is difficult to get at. These conflicting sources leave a lot of wiggle room for Oliver Stone, the director of this film. Of course, as is typical of Stone, he leans so heavily to the left that he falls right off the ledge of reasonable inaccuracy. Stone's filmography is chock full of historical films that do the same thing, and the film Snowden is no exception. For the inaccuracies are enough to burden any viewer with a pernicious lie that seriously damages the perception of the world we all inhabit, and poison us into believing his worldview despite the numerous falsehoods it is based upon. I have known a few historians who consider Oliver Stone's name to be the equivalent of a curse word. So it's about time I take one of his messes apart. Because no matter what part of the political spectrum you land on, this film is indisputably bad historically. The movie starts honestly enough, with reporters waiting with trepidation in Hong Kong for Snowden to arrive. But that is just a framing device, for it swoops right into his time in the US Army. We hear that he is training in Fort Benning, and this is where the movie begins to come apart, within the 5-minute mark. You hear a drill sergeant calling for the recruits as if they are readying to become special forces and rangers simultaneously.
Ranger! So you want to be special forces? Yes, sir!
This is preposterous, and just the first of many overemphasizations that make Snowden out to be more of a badass than everyone else he encounters in this movie. At the real Fort Benning, no matter what your contractual status is, you go through basic just as any other recruit. If he was in the 18 X-Ray Special Forces Candidate Program, or went option 40 to try out for being a ranger after basic, he would not have been treated any differently during basic or infantry training. Also, it is one or the other, not both. Rangers and Special Forces are two different things. One can become Special Forces after becoming a Ranger, but being a Ranger in and of itself does not mean that you are Special Forces. Furthermore, he could not have made it any further than basic training, because he washed out too quickly. The movie shows him jumping from a bunk and hilariously breaking his legs, which according to Snowden did happen, though Congress has said that it was shin splints. In either case, the movie says that he had been walking on broken legs for weeks.
You know, you've been walking around 2 broken legs, best I can tell, for weeks.
What? How? What kind of fool does Stone take us for? You can't walk around on broken legs for 2 weeks in basic training? What? Buckle in, guys, cause I've got some bones to pick with this one. The protagonist's time in the Central Intelligence Agency continues this trend of falsification. He is made out to be a star candidate, performing his tests well beyond the average.
Missed a perfect score on the ASVAB test by a single question. Crushed the language learning test, some Mandarin, some Japanese.
It even shows him beating an astonished class hours before the expected time.
I'm done, sir.
You don't have to tell me when you've completed a stage.
No, I finished the whole thing.
Okay, let's see where you screwed up.
So, what should I do now?
Whatever you want.
For this, the lead instructor takes him under his wing.
I'm your best student. Doesn't that count for something?
Nothing of the sort happened. No one has claimed that he was above average during his time in the CIA, not even Snowden himself. Snowden is a serial exaggerator and has definitely exaggerated about his time in the CIA considerably, but not this portion. Then, the movie shows him becoming some kind of covert operative in Geneva, even taking on an operation to flip an agent, and getting bogged down in a CIA extortion scheme, which makes him quit the job there.
Remind me, are you authorized on any of the NSA programs you used? So we're both doing a little fucked up shit here, huh?
From the evidence available, this is way too far to believe. Snowden was there secretly under an alias, but he would only have been working as a systems administrator. This hogwash about the covert scheme is just wrong. The movie doesn't even bother to explain why he's getting switched roles like this. It throws the protagonist at the situation without much more than a, hey, there's people here, have at 'em.
You ready for a little action?
Really? What, you mean right here?
10,000 bankers in this town. All you need to turn is one. Socialize, meet a few, preferably one seen on a pile of dirty Saudi money that's funding bin Laden.
Woo-wee! I'm a secret agent now!
Secret agent man, secret agent man.
This whole thing is meant to show Snowden being swept up into the company, as the CIA likes to call itself, and then becoming alienated by them, despite being so dearly held. But that whole narrative is undermined by it being fabricated. He was a low-level employee and was never promoted at any point during his brief span in the CIA. Furthermore, he did not quit. He was fired.
I didn't go to London today because I resigned.
That much I can say with confidence. There are contradicting reasons given for this, but the consensus is clear. He was fired. Despite the movie being about a hacker, it is delightfully ignorant of simple computer tricks. When the protagonist meets his future girlfriend, he is surprised to find out that she can run an IP trace.
IP in Virginia.
You know how to run an IP trace?
For those who aren't already laughing, let me show you how simple this is. Let me just Google that for you. And ta-da! And for you enterprising hackers out there, I'm doing this through a VPN, so bugger off. In fact, some of the things revealed by the real Snowden were already well known in hacker circles. If you combine a traceroute command with that IP trace ability, maybe even a whois request, which is basically a heightened IP trace, but it gives you the domain name's owner, you would have seen that much of the internet before 2014 was being routed through government servers. This was not unknown. The real revelations were the extent to which the data was being captured. The best one of these silly mistakes by Oliver Stone is this big intense scene where Snowden is capturing all of the data and transferring it onto a flash drive, and he's afraid somebody will see him doing it. But the way that Stone depicts it is so ridiculously simple to avoid. It's as though Oliver Stone has never seen a Windows PC in his life, because the entire point is that you have Windows. Duh! So you can just move a window in front of the other windows that he's afraid of people seeing. As soon as you realize this, all tension is broken completely. Then again, Oliver Stone doesn't seem to understand how pasta works either.
Shit, I'm sorry, the pasta. It's gonna... 1 second.
I think I actually came pretty close to getting it right this time.
How do you get it wrong, stupid? And this is coming from a guy who famously burnt cereal once. When the protagonist is brought on to the NSA as a contractor, he is offered the job by the Director of National Intelligence himself.
With this new job in Hawaii, you'd have even more access. I asked Corbin to start the conversation, but the offer is mine.
In the movie, Snowden is made out to be a super genius that his former instructors keep tabs on, and that his former instructor helps to further his career, making Snowden part of the in-group. Not even Snowden himself has said anything of the sort. After having listened to the guy yammer on for hours, he does not contend that he was an insider, insinuated into the upper echelon of the intelligence community. He does make some false claims, so even his testimony is faulty, but if he isn't willing to inflate his record on this matter, then no one should. You know what? There are so many faulty things that I'm going to stop explaining these exaggerations, and let's just do a lightning round. What the movie shows him initially doing for the NSA, when he originally worked for Dell, is create some kind of databasing tool that allowed for a new level of data capture.
What's the program name?
Epic Shelter. It was originally some backup program.
Catastrophic site failure.
Yeah. How did you know that?
I built it.
Nope. The movie shows that the NSA was tapping allied countries' infrastructure so that they could just turn it off.
We'd slip these little sleeper programs into power grids, dams, hospitals, and the idea was if the day came when Japan was no longer an ally, it'd be lights out.
Hell no. The movie shows Snowden quitting Dell because he had moral conflicts with what they were doing for the NSA.
You didn't tell me we were running a dragnet on the whole world, Corbin.
Nope. Snowden proposed the Heartbeat program.
Yeah. And we were saying there's so many programs nowadays, it's kind of impossible to keep track of them anymore, right? So why not create a centralized database?
That's a nope. Snowden was working for the NSA as a hacker who hacked hackers.
Our government is hemorrhaging billions of dollars every year to Chinese hackers. And I've been hired to shut them down.
No. Co-workers were in on the leaks. And that's another nope. Plus all the other stuff I've already said. Holy crap, that's bad. Let's just move on because there's basically no truth to be had here. Finally, let's talk about the depiction of the information leaking process. Snowden did in fact trust the reporters with the data.
In my defense, I'm not handling anything anymore. That's been passed to the journalists, and they're using extraordinary security measures to make sure that this is reported in the most responsible way.
So they could filter through the information and make the right decision on what to release to the public.
How you publish is your business, and I trust you. The only thing I ask is you study the data, you be responsible, no names, no specifics, anything ongoing that's critical, you don't release. You just stick to the issue of mass surveillance and let the people decide.
That is true and quite admirable.
You've read every single one.
Well, I do understand what I turned over.
But there's a difference between understanding what's in the documents and reading what's in the documents.
I recognize the concern.
Right, because when you're handing over thousands of NSA documents, the last thing you want to do is read them.
At least when compared to the likes of Bradley Manning. But Manning's indiscriminate leaks were more caused by Julian Assange, and there is a direct link between Snowden and Assange. and the movie downplays that like it's totally unimportant.
In the airport hotel, he's left with his Russian lawyer and a legal advisor from WikiLeaks, Sarah Harrison.
You see, Assange arranged Snowden's papers for a flight out of Hong Kong and his stay at a halfway house. During this time frame, there are a lot of questions up in the air about what Snowden did. He has said that he no longer has access to the information he took to Hong Kong, and the movie parrots that.
You have the encrypted backups. And now I no longer have any access to these files myself. You guys have them all.
But does anybody truly believe that a man who went through all this trouble deleted something that valuable, even though it is infinitely reproducible? If he was able to sneak it out, what might he have access to even now? Instead of deal with these hard questions surrounding Snowden, the film chooses to give him several sweeping speeches, where the music swells and you can practically see a tear slip out of Oliver Stone's eyes as he watches behind the camera. He's trying to make this grand point with exposition, a clear violation of the show don't tell rule. We've all heard Snowden giving these kinds of speeches through live streams, and some of us have even watched the excellent documentary Citizen 4. If I wanted that, I would go watch that. It's a better movie and covers the same material, but with the actual Edward Snowden. It has flaws too, but it openly acknowledges them. Oliver Stone is an inferior director. His point is to make the case that Snowden is a patriot who deserves a presidential pardon.
He's had a lot of guts, and one can never predict the outcome of revealing secrets.
The end credits are a montage just blatantly telling us this.
There is still a thing called execution.
Mr. Snowden actually deserves asylum and protection around the globe, but he does have asylum in Russia at least.
As though we couldn't hear it loud and clear with every single inaccuracy. By expositing this message, the audience is bored, and the message itself is flagellated by the inaccuracies therein. I don't know if Snowden deserves a pardon or not, but we certainly don't need dishonesty to make the case for him. This is malicious untruth of the worst sort. Stone is lying to make a political point under the guise of a based-on-a-true-story movie. The smaller lies slip into the public consciousness as though they are true. With this film, Stone has tried to make Snowden into this misunderstood genius deserving of our gratitude. But in order to do so, he commits deception after deception, which is designed to hinder your understanding of the subject matter and twist the audience into acquiescing to his flawed point of view. Luckily, most people skipped this tripe, and it bombed at the box office, and for good goddamn reasons. Here's the thing though, there is a possible movie where the big questions don't have to be addressed and wouldn't need all this pernicious exposition. Imagine, if you will, this subject framed as a heist film, where Snowden has to plan the crime, steal the data, and escape to hand over the biggest information leak in history. It's based on a true story, has plenty of drama and suspense, and ultimately doesn't have to confront the larger ethical issues at play here. But that's not what we got. Oliver Stone instead does his typical bullshit with historical movies, lying to make a point that may best be served with the truth, if not contradicted by it. This movie is worse than The Revenant or 13 Hours ever were. The sole redeeming aspect of this film is Joseph Gordon-Levitt's performance as Snowden. There were parts I honestly thought they were just overdubbing the actual Snowden. Of course, those seizure scenes ruin any semblance of dignity.